Okay, so I'm going to kick this thing off. Good afternoon. This is Julie Broadway, President at the American Horse Council. I'm coming to you today from our offices in Washington, D.C. It's been a little while since we've been in the office. We've been working remotely due to the pandemic and with some of the civil unrest that we've had in downtown D.C. But it's kind of nice to be back in and sort of see some familiar surroundings and that kind of thing. We've got a really good turnout for today's webinar, so we're really excited about sharing this with you. Couple of logistics first. We are recording this and we'll post the recording after the session, probably tomorrow morning. Please, if you are not a speaker, put your computer or your phone on mute so we don't have a whole lot of background noise. We love to hear those dogs and those animals back there, but that can be a little bit distracting, so help with that. Also, if you're not familiar with Zoom and you are looking at it online, along the bottom is your menu and you will find a chat box. If you have a question for one of our presenters, be sure to hit chat and share your question, and then we will have an open Q&A also at the end if you'd rather wait till the end, so jot your questions down. So those are just a few little logistics that I wanted to let you know. Just so everyone's aware, we've got about 30 people on right now, so just bear with us while we navigate through some of this technology stuff. It's very exciting to have this kind of a crowd. So we're delighted today to feature a really dynamic panel of experts from television and film to live performances. They are masters at captivating the public with horses, and we need all of that in our industry. So we're very excited to have them. Let me kind of introduce them, and we're going to let them take the floor and chat with us. So first up, we're going to hear from Elizabeth K. McCall. Elizabeth has done a lot of different roles. She's been an author, a journalist, and a media consultant who's been involved on the entertainment side of the industry for over 20 years, from writing about horses in film to TV to working with the Arabian Nights to French equestrian theater troupes. And she's just been a stellar liaison for our industry in all kinds of areas. So Elizabeth, take a few minutes, tell us where you're coming from today. I see all that green floral back there, and give us a little insight on life as Elizabeth McCall and all the exciting things you do.
Horses have taken me everywhere. Today I'm actually in Ocala, Florida. I normally am in Los Angeles, at least most of the time. And I came in for something called the Science of Confidence and Connection. It was a 2-day workshop clinic this weekend that was fabulous. For a sports psychologist and a noted silver medalist. And anyway, you can find out more about that another time. But one of the things it dealt with was the horse-human bond. And that's something that I think is going to come out repeatedly today. I've had the really good fortune as both a journalist and a publicist to see a lot of different sides of the horse industry. And what really struck me was when I got involved in writing about horses in movies. And about the same time, it was live entertainment too. I happened to meet one of the former stunt coordinators from City Slickers when his daughter won a Grand Prix at Joan Irvine Smith's, used to be the Oaks facility down in San Juan Capistrano. And, you know, she happened to win. I went out to see, I'm going to see this man in the cowboy hat. And I'm going, oh, hello. And it was Dad. And I got his name and I went ahead and sent him a copy of the article that I wrote about her winning. And I thought, gosh, I wonder if he knows anybody in the movie business that I could talk to. I've been thinking about writing about that for a while. Sure
Elizabeth,
yes.
one of our attendees is asking if you could increase your volume. They said you sound really light.
It is on max. I will get as close as I can.
You can get a little closer, maybe speak up a little bit.
We are in Ocala, as I said. I heard some thunder outside. Hopefully it will be great. My journalism career really kicked me into horses in film and entertainment. I followed an interest in horses in film, and when I found out that the father of a trainer for Grand Prix jumper, and Joy Gatlin, her father was a stunt coordinator on City Slickers. And through him, I met Corky Randall, who was the legendary trainer who made his name on the Black Stallion. His father trained Roy Rogers horses, and also he was on the Mask of Zorro at that time. So I had a chance to follow the horses through their training on the Mask of Zorro. Meanwhile, about the same time, I did some PR for the Alisal Guest Ranch in Solvang, California. Happened to find out from their general manager that suddenly they had a whole change in the guest profile of the people that had come to their ranch thanks to the movie City Slickers. About 50% of their guest profile shifted from only repeat business and horse people to first-time horse people because of that movie. I think thanks to the impact of the black stallion, a lot of the Arabian industry can credit a huge demand in black Arabians, often stallions. And also just the movie The Horse Industry is something that really, in the movie The Horse Industry, the movie The Horse Whisperer put natural horsemanship in the spotlight. I sometimes have written, actually a lot of times, for mainstream media about horses in film and such, and it's, or horses in anything. And once they got the Horse Whisperer moniker down, they wanted to attach it to everything, but it's something that stuck. It put horse whispering, put natural horsemanship in a way of being with horses in the public eye. And then I had the good fortune to get acquainted with Cavalia through a book I wrote called The Tao of Horses. And thanks to Mark Miller, who had owned and run Arabian Nights for some time then, I got wind of something that was in development in Canada. And at the time, I interviewed Norman Latourelle and the original stars, Frederick Bignon and Magali Delgado. And I said, you know, when you come to the US, if you need some help, give me a call. And they did. So I had the very good fortune of being the horse industry liaison for Cavalia and traveling with the show. And that show literally not just introduced thousands, but millions of people, many first timers to horses. Many people who could never get a spouse or a friend to go along to a horse show came along with them to this show in the big white tent and had an experience of going into another world, seeing horses up close in a performance setting where they could experience the horse-human bond, all kinds of different riding. It was also like a meeting ground for all kinds of disciplines of the horse industry as well, and breeds. There were a number in there, but it brought a lot of people together. I had many times that I would go into the show at the end of the night. People didn't want to leave. They didn't want to leave the magic they had encountered there. So even though a lot of the horse world's canceled or rescheduled around right now till next year, there's a part of the show that must go on that all these people that are here tonight, Kansas and Ashley, and I know people that are watching too, there's an element of that that's integral to our industry. And certainly when everybody's out there, when there's a movie like you're going to hear about what Ashley's doing coming out, just think of it as a giant advertisement for our industry out there in the public's eye. And why not jump on the wagon and say, and if you like that, we can give you a little experience here. Okay, let's go. Kansas, take it away.
Okay, so we're delighted to have Kansas Carradine with us today. She comes from that Hollywood acting legacy, and she's defined herself and her career with horses. She has been a member of the Riata Ranch Cowboy Girls, and she appeared in the US and abroad with trick riding and roping, and she's got lots of interesting stories to tell. And Kansas, where are you today? What's new with you?
Thanks, Julie. So I'm actually in Quebec, Canada. So I moved here a few years ago, but I'm a Californian. I've always been based in West Coast horse culture. So I have at my roots a little bit of English equitation that I started out, but really, you know, riding trail and riding Western and Western reining horses and the working cow horse. That was kind of my foundation. Which is great out on the West Coast. I mean, we still have a very active horse culture. And when I was little, my dad had a couple horses in the backyard, and it was in the days where you could still go ride on the beach. And I was not even big enough to put the saddle on the horse, but I was tied on and just on the back and galloping down the beach. And as the stories go, I used to even ask people who were taking their horses down the beach, hey, I was hitchhiking at like 5 years old to get rides all the time. So I was what you call horse crazy, and I have 2 girls now, so I kind of know what that looks like from afar because they're the same way. But you know, the bug was bit really early, and that got the horses under my skin. I have horses on my skin in this horse shirt that a friend of mine who's an artist, Leslie Ann Webb, has made. So yeah, it became something that was really everything in my life. I did a lot of small activities like gymnastics, singing and some theater, things like that over the years, but horses was the one thing that really stuck. My dad was obviously, my dad was David Carradine, so he was involved in Westerns and in Hollywood. And I was always saying that my uncles and my dad really enjoyed playing the part of the cowboy, because there was something about the Hollywood cowboy that was part of the mystique of the American traditions. My dad used to say that Westerns are America's Shakespeare. You know, the UK have a very strong Shakespearean tradition, and America has Westerns at the core of its artistic expression. You know, so horses and man have been inextricably linked for so many years, crossing new frontiers and really creating the expansion of the world. And for me, they never really left. So again, growing up with horses since I was little, I started out, you know, doing lots of trail riding and gymkhana, then went into hunter jumper. And when I was 11, I was what I thought kind of sent away to this horrible place that was a summer camp that didn't have a cross country team, which is what I really wanted to do. So I was a little bit grumpy about going to the summer camp. So I was 11 years old and I went to Riata Ranch, which at the time had been around for about 40 years. They'd had over 2,000 students that they brought through reining cow, regular horsemanship shows, and then into the trick riding and roping, which Riata Ranch International is famous for now. And so when I was 11, I went to summer camp and I was supposed to stay just for a short time. And that got extended, like some kids who fall in love with their horses there and then want to stay longer. So long story short, I never came home because I moved in with the owners of the ranch. And I actually ended up staying there until I graduated high school at 18 years old. So as a professional entertainer, I did all the big shows before I turned 18, and that would be, you know, National Finals Rodeo. We did World Cup events. We did Equitana, both USA and Asia Pacific, the very first one in Australia. Equitana in Germany, which is the very first one as well. So international performances, we would do a lot of Mexican shows down in Mexico, charreatas and the traditional vaquero traditions. So really just I had this extremely well-rounded view of horses and entertainment and how horse culture was something that was a passion all around the world and all of the different disciplines associated with it. Even though we were invited as a Riata Ranch group to do trick riding, Roman riding, and trick roping displays, so roping on the horses, we got to see everything. You know, we got to see Pat Pirelli, and we got to see Diane Olds Rossi perform, and we got to see Ramon Becerra, and all the notariable acts from around the world. A lot of times at rodeos, you were the only contract act because we did lots of American rodeos as well. But you had a great respect for everybody in their part of what they brought for the horse, whether it was from the traditional ranch riding and roping skills, or whether we ended up at dressage in the wine country, excuse me, for all the dressage horses, or if we did the Del Mar horse show, the Del Mar Night of the Horse. So it was just an incredible education, really, to see how horses were displayed publicly and how that really draws people in, because like Elizabeth was speaking about, it's an opportunity for people to say, hey, I know you're not really horsey, but come on with me to this event, whether it's the Festival of the Spanish Horse at the LA Equestrian Center or Equine Affair. We have these gala events that really helped bring in people and made it was a little bit more exciting than a horse show if you're not trained to really know what you're looking at, right? So this was kind of a great bridge and opener, I would think, for people to really have community with their horses. So let's see, that took me after high school, because I'd already done so many things up until I graduated high school. I wanted to branch out like many young people and stretch into a different arena. And so I actually moved down to Hollywood and ended up going into stunt work. And so I worked on, it's interesting, I got my first job in the movie Hidalgo because all the guys were busy working on another film. And so I was actually hired to double a man. So my first job in Hollywood is playing a guy, which was kind of funny. And then we did some special events and TV shows and things like that. And then I heard wind of this amazing opportunity or this amazing show that had surfaced. It had more of a European flair to it. I didn't at the time know that it was Canadian, but of course this is what became Cavalia. And I hadn't trick rode in probably about a year and a half, but it was in there and definitely in the blood. And so I prepared for my audition, and this would have been 2004 with Fred and Magali Delgado. Within that first year of touring North America, they started to rehire a couple people, and I was one of those people that was put into really working with the original cast. So it was an incredible gift. And I remember the first time that I actually watched the show, because the horse that I had been hired, but the horse that I was going to ride wasn't exactly ready yet. You want to be able to develop that bond. It was a bond that was already kind of accelerated in the fact that I did get in the show in 12 days. But it took me 12 days to put him in. So for those first 2 weeks, I would watch the show. And the first night I sat down with the artistic director, and I just was amazed that I was going to be a part of this incredible fiesta, this incredible multimedia display, and then the heart and unity that came depicted with all of these disciplines coming together. So it really was emotional for me. And I was so grateful to have been cast. And then long story short, I ended up staying with the show and working off and on both behind the scenes and on stage, training riders and training horses for the last 15 years. So Cavalia has definitely become part of my life in a very deep way. And I love being a part of those equestrian teams. Riata Ranch has a similar legacy, and I think Cavalia as well came along at a time where it really transformed the whole idea of how we can work with horses. Anybody who knows about Liberty now has to understand that Fred Pignon was one of the people who really brought that to a wider audience, as opposed to bringing it really into your living room, which we can do now, which is great. But before the days of YouTube, people would come into this incredible intimate experience, and the darkened theater of Cavalia, which is part of what made it so special, because often in horse shows and horse galas, even if you'd had some sort of lighting, it wasn't nearly as refined as what Cavalia really brought out. And so we know, and Ashley will attest to that, that the magic of theater and the magic of creating that type of cinematic experience with special effects, and in that darkened room, you really have this focus. And that's what allowed Cavalia to really take these disciplines to a different level, and adding like this emotionally evocative situation, because everybody who came away said that they would be in tears. It was moving beyond what anybody would expect. You walk in and you want to see entertainment, and people really were touched deeply. And I think that's why, again, Elizabeth speaks so much to the point that it really was able to grab people who are not necessarily call themselves horse folks, but boy, were kids more interested to go sign up for something that they may have been intimidated before, because they see horses play it. Gosh, they're like a dog, they can sit down and they can have different personalities. Well, those of us who are horse people have had these incredibly transformative relationships over and over again. But this was really getting it out. I mean, we had a theater that held 2,000 people a night. So 2,000 people a night, 8 shows a week. It was really getting the word out in a big way. And I think that that's really also created an elevation in the horse world, where everybody has now a metric to see what is, really a compassionate way of working with the horses, and what is a very highly refined and amazing quality of equine entertainment. It did raise the bar in many ways, and it helped a lot of people branch off and take off on their passions. They said, well, maybe I don't fit into the regular horse show world. I'm going to try and expand into this new way and play with my horse and see what my horse wants to do. Because I think oftentimes in the horse world, we can get stuck in rigidity. And sometimes it is a bad match maybe for the horse and the discipline that we choose. And this really allowed us to kind of open up and explore more, and really see from an intuitive space, what are these deeper connections? What is my horse telling me, showing me? It's just, it's transformed everything. So that's really been in the last 15 years. And now the questions that we see, the conversations that we have, the content that has emerged in the last 15 years is very progressive. And I'm so excited to see how everything is building upon itself. And I know that the new screen entertainment, as well as what Ashley's bringing forth, it's exponentially growing, because it's really showing us that much more about how we can look at horses in a deeper way, and in a more compassionate way, in a more profound way. So Ashley, I think that's a good point for you to come in and tell everybody about what you're doing, because it's really amazing and exciting.
So we're delighted to have Ashley Avis with us. She's an American director, screenwriter, and producer. She put together her passion for horses in films, and she's doing that a really amazing job with an upcoming feature film, Black Beauty, which she wrote and directed and did a reprisal of that classic tale. So Ashley, we're delighted to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm coming to you guys from Marina del Rey in the Los Angeles area. And growing up, the two things that were most important to me were books and horses. I grew up riding. When I was little, I wanted to be the first Triple Crown winning female jockey, but that wasn't quite in the cards because I ended up springing up to 5'8". I cried the day that I went over 5'3". But horses were such a big part of my life growing up and so transformative with my growth as a person. So I always knew I would become a writer. I thought that I would I would become a novelist and write young adult novels, probably equestrian based, and ride for my whole life. And so I grew up, I started with Western and then progressed into hunter jumper. And then when I got older, my path ended up taking me to New York City to go to school, to go to college. And from there, as a writer, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I wrote as a journalist for Nielsen Media while I was in college and interned for a variety of production companies and discovered screenplays. And growing up, I loved, of course, all of the different books by, of course, Anna Sewell's Black Beauty and Walter Farley's Black Stallion. And it was discovering screenplays and the sense of poetry that you can infuse into a screenplay. You have such a limited amount of space to write something very impactful and very beautiful and very visually evocative. And so as soon as I started going down that path, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so I saved up some money, and I was working a variety of different jobs in New York. I worked as a real estate agent. I taught wedding couples ballroom dance, just anything that you can do to stay afloat in New York City. And so for that period of my life, up until I was 17, my life was dominated by horses. And then from 18 until my mid-20s, New York, and then moving out to Los Angeles, it was a pause in that part of my life, which was very strange, but it's amazing how you're brought back to certain things that are your destiny. And that happened with Black Beauty. So when I was little, it was reading Black Beauty that made me want to start riding and to have horses part of my life. And when I was 6 or 7, I remember a little friend of mine, we were in Florida, and we had just finished up the day collecting seashells on the beach and looking for sand dollars. And we went to her house, and she put on the 1994 version of Black Beauty, the movie. And I saw that, and I begged my mother that day to let me start riding. And so Black Beauty, full circle now, having been brought aboard to write and direct that film, it was the merger of my two greatest passions coming together again, which has been incredibly special. So we've been down the road now in the film world, as Kansas well knows. It takes forever to get a project off the ground, and Black Beauty has come together so quickly. By the time it debuts later this year on Disney Plus, it'll be about 3 years from the first meeting I took, which is unbelievably fast in our world. So, and again, speaking to the serendipity and the way the variety of projects that we now have either coming out or in development that are all horse-based. They're all in the equestrian world. They all have these amazing messages that I so passionately want to infuse in their storylines. Black Beauty came about in Hollywood. You can take something called a general meeting, where you just go in and you meet someone and you talk about projects and you see if there's any synergy. You see if there is a script they have or a script you have that might end up being something you both like. And I went into this meeting that evolved into Black Beauty. It was the first meeting that I didn't know what I was going to pitch. And that's the only time that's ever happened in my career. Usually I write across different genres. And I went in and I met with the producer who's best known for the Resident Evil franchise, named Jeremy Bolt. And I went in and that's the one genre I didn't write in. And so I thought, I'm going to keep an open mind, see what happens. And I went in, and he's this soft-spoken, very brilliant, very compassionate Englishman. And we sat in his office and we had tea. And he asked me, Ashley, what made you want to become a filmmaker? And I said, well, I grew up, horses were a big part of my life growing up. And my favorite moment in cinema is the moment in The Black Stallion where Alec and the Black are on the beach. And it's 5 minutes set to score. There's not a piece of dialogue. And it goes into that beautiful, lyrical, mysterious connection of a person and a horse. And he said, Ashley, it's funny you mentioned that. My partner and I, we've wanted to remake Black Beauty for 20 years. if you have a take, let me know. And I had a take right in the room, and I pitched him an idea, and I went home, and for 10 days, I put together this 40-page long document with visuals and a storyline, and I presented that to him. And it was within a couple of months that I was brought aboard to write that screenplay. And so it's a modernization of Anna Sewell's classic story. And because it was a seminal book to me growing up, it was really important to me to find the parallels and the retention of all of those incredible messages that makes Black Beauty such a timeless classic. It's all relevant to today. How she revolutionized our understanding of horse and animal empathy, and that horses can feel emotions. We go into this with Black Beauty. It's part of one of Beauty's monologues, that horses can feel love and loss and heartbreak and joy. And what she did for the horses of her time is very much what we hope to do for the horses of today, to give them a voice and illuminate some of the issues that are prevalent in our industry, as well as shining a light on the fact that you don't necessarily have to own a horse of your own to be part of this world and part of that magic. And I think that's what, Kansas, you so elegantly said about Cavalia, where you get to go and you get to have that experience and you get to have that feeling of connection. And that's the same thing with film, to be able to sit in a dark room, as I have for the past couple of months, because I also edited Black Beauty. So I've been in a very small dark room,
amazing.
editing the film, and just many, many mornings spent just weeping, because it's a very emotional movie and it's very impactful. But I'm very excited to not only bring a really emotional, beautifully shot movie to the public, but I really think that Black Beauty is going to do a lot of good. And I really hope Anna Sewell would be proud of the messages that we're hoping to instill. So that's our goal with Beauty. And then on the heels of that, I'm also directing and producing a documentary about wild horses in the American West called Wild Beauty, Mustang Spirit of the West. We're hopefully going to be back into production on that in a couple of weeks after we finish Black Beauty Post. And then I'm also writing and show running a new television series for Imagine Entertainment called Briar Hollow, which is an elevated family series. I'm not allowed to speak too clearly to the details of the plot line, but it's a magical world, and it has some really beautiful messages to it as well. So I'm just very, like I said, I'm very excited to just continue pushing forward horses in the public eye through these really stunning projects.
Oh, wow. That's so exciting. I can't wait. Now I'm going to bated breath to see the movie. Hey, so I have a couple of questions that have popped up, and I want to get you guys to chime in on this. So one person would like to know, where do you find horses to use for film or entertainment industry? What's your go-to source for finding the right horse for the role?
Oh goodness. Well, we're down the line with that with Briar Hollow right now, which we can't. I'll talk. So there's a very special horse that Kansas and Elizabeth and I have been discussing as a potential star for Briar Hollow. But for Black Beauty, Black Beauty is set in the American West and in upstate New York. But we shot the film in South Africa, which doubles extremely well for those parts of our country. And we also, with the documentary, captured real footage of the Aniki herd in Utah. And so when you see the movie, Beauty's family intercuts with the Aniki herd, and it looks like that's her family band, which was a really fun editing challenge. But to cast Beauty, given we were so far away, before I got to South Africa, I was receiving all sorts of photos from the trainers, and I said, guys, I need to see some video and see see them in motion and see what their personalities are like, because we had over 20 Black Beauties play Beauty, because the film shows Beauty at different ages. So starting from the very beginning, we tried very hard to film a real birth. We had lights strung up and ready in a tree for 2 weeks, and an entire crew on standby with their phones ready to go at any time in the night to get in their cars and to drive. And certain people were camped out near the stable where these 2 pregnant mares were, and all very safely. We had, it was the equivalent of the Humane Society on set, so we were very limited to what we would be able to capture. Had we been able to capture a birth, those mares were so late that we ended up having to scrap the plan, which was such a bummer for the crew that was on standby until the wee hours of the night for two weeks waiting for those calls. But something miraculous happened in that on one of our, what's called a pre-shoot day, where you're not really filming anything for the movie, you're doing tests and different things, we get a call early in the morning that at another farm, a little black colt, and Beauty's female in our movie, but a little black colt was born into the likeness of Black Beauty with a perfect white star and one little white back sock. And we were able to film that little guy within about 20 hours. We were able to capture a little bit of footage. And then within about a week, we were able to bring him and his mother to the location that doubled for Wyoming. And we were able to capture them at sunrise and sunset, just dancing across through these golden wildflowers. It was just so magical. So casting him was very organic, but for the main Black Beauties, I really wanted Beauty to be a thoroughbred. At least she's a Mustang in the film, but there aren't a lot of thoroughbreds in South Africa, interestingly, which I didn't know as I embarked on wanting to find, and having Beauty have that grace and that power and that delicacy. And so the trainers ended up sourcing 4 horses. They were off the track thoroughbreds that they had about 10 weeks to train with Liberty work, and our Liberty trainer came from Australia. His name is Cody Rawson-Harris, and he's an absolute genius. And so it was interesting because given that they were off the track, we weren't sure. I was really worried about our actress not being able to ride, because the authenticity of the film was extremely important to me. And Mackenzie ended up doing all of her own stunts, which was amazing. And we had one horse, we had a gelding named Indiana, who was kind of the safer Beauty for like galloping scenes and things. But those thoroughbreds were unbelievable. And there are 2 main beauties featured in the film. Spirit, it was interesting to learn from Cody and Kansas. Maybe you could speak to this too, about Cody was telling me about this. Spirit could dual process. She could listen to a command from Cody while still remaining very active. So we really wanted to draw out the personality of Beauty, because a lot of films and TV shows, you cut to a horse, you cut to a medium shot of the horse. And it's not like you're looking for a reaction. We really wanted to personalize Beauty through our imagery and treat her just like you would a human, having close-ups and making sure that she, even if she's not speaking with the elegant voiceover, she's still participating, she's still thinking. And so it was interesting with our 2 main Black Beauties, Spirit and Jenny. Their eyes were always very alive. They were always thinking, and capturing that really makes Beauty as the lead character. You really find that emotion through her. But Kansas, have you experienced that with different horses and their different personalities, the ones that really want to be part of the show and they're alive in a special way?
Well, I think what you're speaking to is something that exists in horses. Again, that maybe we don't talk as much about it, but their ability to kind of multitask or process, like you said, dual processing. And I would even say sometimes triple processing, because whether you're in the horse show ring or whether you're on a set, these type of horses are able to perceive the environment around them, perceive anything that is like a survival threat, like, oh gosh, something fell down in front, I'm going to move out of that, while listening to the rider at the same time. So in a way, they're always kind of triple processing, and we just maybe don't recognize it or acknowledge it all the time because it's so automatic. And at the same time, I think that definitely there's horses that are, how do I say, I sometimes call them like the Buddha natured horses, because they have this really grounded quality, but very aware. And I wouldn't say aware like alert, but that they're always kind of present and with you in a very real way. That, those are the horses that people say, gosh, they're so much like a human, they're right here with me. And I have a feeling that he's, they don't process it in the same, say, kind of animal reactivity way that we might be used to with certain, oh, that's just a horse being a horse, So there's a different kind of sentient nature that's really profound. And I think obviously, to go back to your question, Julie, when we're looking for horses in the show, we want a horse that is, I always say number one thing is confidence. You want a horse that is able to have their own confidence, so that then we can add other things to do to give them. And when we start to train them, and again, 10 weeks that Cody had, Cody or Corey, sorry. Cody, yeah, it was right. Okay, I don't want to get his name wrong. And I hear he's awesome, and I know his dad too. So he comes from a line of amazing horse trainers. But to touch into that, the horses are always asking for our full awareness, meaning our full presence. And at the same time, when we're introducing them into new situations, whether it's walking onto a darkened stage and having snow fall on them, or whether it's walking into a sound stage and having all of these distractions around, we're really asking for them to have that, the grounded confidence already, and then we build upon that, right? And we use a lot of reinforcement when we're able to train in those short periods of time to really build their confidence. Like, yep, that's exactly what we're asking for. Yep, that's exactly, let's keep going with that. Oh, that was great. And it's really, you know, uh, a lot of positive pieces. And the one thing I really wanted to mention to Julie is that, when we look for horses, because a lot of times they don't have to have the same rigors as being in, say, a halter class or being in the show world. I've seen a lot of amazing exhibition horses, let's kind of separate it into that class, come out of very surprising circumstances. Meaning, I've had an amazing trick riding horse who was taken out of the kill pen. And I've myself personally have found horses that say, oh gosh, this horse was in a Western Pressure program and he just doesn't want to slow down. I say, well, that works fine for me. We want him to go nice and full out for our trick riding. And man, that horse was in the show for 8 years, solid, totally sound, totally happy and doing his job. And he was in the right place. So again, they're not coming from a training program, because especially in what I do, looking for horses in, entertainment, and specifically doing kind of contract actor specialty work, there's no barns that exist. Doesn't exist. You have to make them. And so oftentimes we'll take them out of different programs. I personally have a sore spot for ranch broke horses because they've seen everything. They've been there, done that. They can go work on cows. They can work all day, and then they can, have flags going off and have been around, a lot of different distractions and things like that. So, and that's because I tend to work with, more the quarter horse types. On the other side of the spectrum, we also have a lot of exposure with the Spanish horses, and because it's very much a European influence, a lot of times we will source those horses from Europe. And the foundation for horses in the States, when they're going to really be going into a kind of a competitive dressage world, for example, and be kind of an FAI track, is a little bit different than horses that, we don't have the same rigidities in certain aspects, because we do allow horses a little bit of freedom. And there's not a judge who's going to tick you off. There's people in the audience who might have a very discerning eye, and they'll notice, that horse came out of frame a little bit, or oh, that horse is getting a little bit upset. They'll see these things for sure. But the general public, we can be a little bit more, I guess, relaxed with our horses. And even though we still have very high standards for quality, it gives you a different latitude for when we're choosing. So I think it's really interesting, because we can find these horses in all sorts of unsuspecting places. And sometimes, we'll say, oh gosh, this horse was was being ridden by a kid as a rope horse, and he couldn't even canter to the right. Well, all of a sudden he ends up being like a fantastic Roman riding horse and part of a team that, is jumping over fire, all these kind of things. So you never know where you're going to find them. And I think in any discipline, people will say that it's that special horse, and they don't all come along so easily, right? They really reveal themselves and show us what they like and what they want to do. And I'm sure Ashley can attest to finding those amazing stories, like when Spirit, came forward, and you see more of these horses' personalities and how they're so expressive in these subtle ways. And I love that you're going to be able to draw them in and showing that expressive nature of the eye, because obviously horse can be standing still and doing their job, if the job is to stand still, and a whole inner world is going on. And really, I think that's what Black Beauty is showing, is this inner world. And it's really not something that we can see from our live show ring, because it's so far away. But that's the beauty of film, is that we really are able to kind of show this other story. Like, how are the horses there holding us? One quick story. I was trick riding and doing a hang off to one side, and my horse is always straight as an arrow. And there was another horse that accidentally was coming straight for us. So you can see this would be a problem, right? My horse is always straight as an arrow, but in this particular instance, he was able to think for himself in the middle of the show and go around this other horse so that I wasn't hit. And that's my horse thinking in the speed of the moment, basically in like a 20-second run. and I was completely hands-free, upside down, unable to control the horse at the time. He's totally free. And that's one of the things that's really interesting, about trick riding, is that we have to trust the horses and teach them to think on their own, because they're not going to be restrained in any way. So yeah, the horses are totally able to dual process. They're way better than an Intel and processor.
I
Great
have a
story.
comment.
Great story. We've got some questions coming in, so let's get to a couple of these. So my first person says, for an accomplished young rider, what would be some productive first steps to jump into the entertainment business while maintaining a focus on horse activities? What advice would you give a young person who says, hey, this Ashley inspired me, Kansas inspired me, how do I get into this business?
Yeah, I mean, I think the multidisciplinary is really helpful. People have asked oftentimes, and I've auditioned people who want to get into kind of the cavalla or into equestrian entertainment. Doing stunts in the movies is also, a great thing. If I had been educated when I was younger too, I think I probably would have gone there a little bit sooner. But having multidisciplinary skills. So if you're already a really proficient like hunter jumper, and or you have a very good English foundation, great. And start to learn a little bit about reining. Start to go do a little bit of barrel basing. Do some other things where you get to really see your horse be free. And then on the contrary, so if you're pretty handy gymkhana rider, or you've got all your Western pleasure down and all these things, then go ahead and take some really good foundation dressage classes and really start to give yourself a classical education. And then also make sure that you're able to give your horse what we call cross training. So if you're always doing, jumping, or all these dressage, really learn a little bit about that liberty, so that you can give your horses a little bit of that mental relaxation too, and find out how they like to play. I think it's great that there's all these movements with free jumping and a lot more bridleless work taking place. To take those reins away and see how you can communicate with your horse, it's a really fun thing, and it'll just make you a better rider.
That's great
I
advice.
want to jump in.
Okay, come on, Elizabeth.
Yeah,
I
please.
want to jump in. Let me jump in. Okay, I wanted to Liberty work. I have seen such a dramatic rise in that, and in terms of anyone wanting to learn about aspect of horse industry where you get a chance to kind of perform, Liberty work is opening up the door. I was still explaining it, like what this is a lot of times in the beginning of cavalla, which even if you say something like whip cues, and people are whip cues, but it's like a conductor leading an orchestra. And there's some of these Liberty trainers out there, they only use their fingers or their hands or a motion. And some of the original stars of cavalla started, Frederick and Magali started teaching some Liberty courses, but Sylvia Zerbini, who later starred in cavalla, has taught Liberty classes around, and they're hugely popular. The people of all ages, and I think that's something. Even if somebody that may be farther along in their equestrian career, they can connect with that. It's a way you can connect with your horse. Maybe your performances are on YouTube or something, but then you're getting into other things that you can take advantage of. What is it that these people are doing on stage or in a film that you really like? When you've seen a horse trainer hiding under a bag and sticking his finger out and just going like that, and the horse turns its head a different way, to me, that's one of the most exciting things that's going on, no matter who's starring in a movie. But also there's some of the horses that come alive at Liberty, and they suggest what to do. There was one in the original cavalla. He was in a trio of Liberty stallions that Frederick Pignon Itez, you'll remember him. It was a funny horse. And the minute he had a fallen crest. The minute he'd get on stage, he would sit. They had a part where they were all sitting down or laying down, and they were supposed to get up. He played with the audience. He loved to be on stage. And there are horses that are like that. They'll come up with their own thing. I had a horse that started speaking on request, and he started doing all kinds of things. He decided he liked to twirl something around in a circle. My jacket, but then I taught him to pick up hats. There's some people out there like Alan Pogue, who's done a lot of training. There are an endless number of people. Dan James, Kansas, recently told me has started a Liberty Association and competitions, and I think particularly that's someplace where people can safely, and safety is a big aspect of this. You got to be safe. Anything you're doing in front of the public, and for the horse's sake, and also remember, you got they're there too. It's not just about you being there, having people clap at you. Do they like it? But some of these horses love it, and they just come alive. And especially at Liberty, it's like, oh no, I know how to do this, and they come alive and do it twice as much, and then they add their own little spin to things.
So Ashley, the next question I have, I think I'm going to send to you. So Juliet has asked us, what resources does the equine film industry use for recruiting and reaching out to educators? I'm a newly hired equine school recruiter to a university that has 2 4-year equine study degrees and an online equine master's degree. We are expanding into including STEM subjects, of which the arts is inclusive of film.
Interesting. That's phenomenal. So in terms of recruiting to those programs, I mean, I think that certainly with something like Black Beauty coming out later this year and some of these other projects, that's going to heighten the awareness and hopefully the want to participate not only in advocacy but also education and raising awareness to that there are these programs available. I mean, I think that comes down to marketing and drafting off of the power of an upcoming film project that stars an Oscar winner. I think that there's just going to naturally be more awareness for a number of things after the holidays this year, and trying to latch onto that, so to speak, if that's helpful. But what an exciting new program.
Yeah, isn't that cool? So here's a follow-up. And the person says, this question is for all 3 of our panelists. How do we incorporate the presence of horses into more scripts? Not how do we make more horse movies, but how do we simply fold the presence of more domestic animals, horses, dogs, etc., into the characters and the plot developments that we see? Storylines are still so either or. Either we are watching a horse film or a dog film, or we are watching a film where there is little to no presence of animals at all. When will we hear a character say, I'll be right there, I had to go feed the horse first, for instance? And how might we encourage more writing that reflects how much of our lives our animals share with us?
What an interesting question. I think it really comes down to if a writer has a connection with animals. For example, there's a project that I'm developing now that would shoot in Africa, and Africa is a very special place for me. I went to Ghana when I was 16, and it was very transformative. So I've always felt a connection. And with the film that we're thinking of shooting there, and I have to be a little careful about the details that I can reveal here, but I think it's safe to say it's not a movie about animals necessarily, but I very much want to see a white lion, or I want to see, it's important to me as a horse person and an animal person to infuse my different film projects with the presence of the majesty of animals. If you're filming in Africa and you have the tapestry of those amazing landscapes, to also infuse certain scenes with seeing those animals and seeing the majesty in that's personally important to me. So perhaps maybe a change. There are different trends happening in the film industry clearly right now, and maybe one of those after Beauty comes out is to see more of that presence. Because it's correct. It doesn't have to just be a movie about a horse or specifically about animals, or we bought a zoo, or you can still show some really beautiful relationships organically in a story. It's just purposefully including them at the script stage.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to ask Kathy to unmute herself and ask her question. Kathy is my colleague, and she is the CEO at the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship. So she has a lot of passion for that particular discipline of our space. So Kathy, what was your question for Ashley?
Well, I started my question with, is it too self-serving for me to ask this question? But I'm gonna ask it anyway, Ashley. I didn't know if you were familiar with the industry of equine assisted services, also known as equine assisted activities and therapies, and whether you had considered or might consider a movie with that incredible topic of the connection that happens between the participants, the clients, the patients that are receiving equine assisted therapy or equine assisted, therapeutic riding, the incredible connection that happens for them, and then the life-changing the life-changing outcomes for them, where, you know, people are, children are taking their first step or speaking their first word or that sort of thing. So didn't know if you had ever thought about that topic as a possible movie.
Yes, that is part of a storyline in something that we're developing currently. And I have an aunt in Casper, Wyoming that has a ranch, and when she's much older now, but when she was younger, she actually had a program for autistic children doing therapy with donkeys. And my favorite story of hers was, there was a little boy who had never spoken a word, and he was 10 or 11 years old. And his very first word was ear, because he was clutching that donkey's ear. And his mother just broke down because he had, and I think that there's an enormous power to that incredible connection and that healing that can happen through horses and people, or it's really, really, really powerful. So it's something we're going to be touching on, I believe, in a narrative film that is in development. And then it's something that I also will be touching on in our documentary, because we've also rescued a number of horses recently that we've been pairing with the right adopters. And one it's actually a mare that is about 10 years old that came from a BLM roundup. And that beautiful mare is going to this little girl in Florida who is autistic, and it's going to be her therapy. She's going to be her therapy horse. And the little girl said she's going to name this white mare Luna, because she's had many dark days behind her, but sees with this horse only full moons ahead. And she just lost her dad as well. And so I think that, and it's stories like that I think to illuminate certain issues with horses, or just to bring them more into the public eye so people can enjoy them. I think it's those personal stories, those personal deep connections that we want to tell, where people will care more. Because if you link on, just like with a character in a novel, you care about the character, then you're going to care about the bigger picture of it versus the other way around. So yes, those types of therapies will be featured in some of the things we're doing.
Oh, great.
That's very exciting, and thank you, because those stories abound all across the country, all across the world, actually. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Looking forward to that, Ashley. Okay, so this isn't just a one-way street here. I have someone who's written in who says, I have a subscription box company for horse crazy girls. Is there materials we could get that would help promote the Black Beauty movie and or the Breyer show to her subscribers? So before we sign off today, please, Ashley and Kansas and Elizabeth, share your contact information so we can connect Tina and you, so we can get the word out about Black Beauty and the other things you guys have got coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I that would be, given Black Beauty is with Disney Plus, I would have to ask some of the people over there and for Imagine, but our documentary, for example, is something that we're producing under my own banner. So I could certainly share some materials that can help cross promote, and I'd be very happy to be in touch to do some of that.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to, with our little bit of time I've got left here, I'm trying to scroll through the rest of these questions. Dan, of course, Dan always has great questions. We need a foundation of general public support for our equine endeavors to guarantee long-term health. We're talking about exposure here, which is important. How do we follow up this exposure with access? If we can develop broad public access to equine relationships, we will provide an extremely valuable gift. Dan, are you there? You want to follow up with that? Oh, it says he's out there somewhere, but I don't, he may be muted.
Okay, am I unmuted?
There you are. Pose your question out there.
Okay, so I have a dream. I'm getting an echo here, so I have to fix this. Okay. Do you hear me?
Yep, and you're all clear now.
Okay, so my dream is that we'd be able to have facilities around the country where people can come from the cities and experience, well, generally agricultural endeavors, but in particular equine endeavors. Whatever the discipline is, the ability to develop these relationships with horses is invaluable. I see that in my own barn here. where we have clients. One fellow with MS has come in, and now he claims that his relationship development with horses has saved his life. And we need to really get broad access to this equine world, I think, and I don't know how to do it. So that's the basis of this question, is to get people to think of how we can really get our public involved with our equine endeavors, whatever they are.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that question. I think it's something the industry has been asking itself for a while. I heard a speaker yesterday talk about diversity and inclusion, and we're going to talk about that at the American Horse Council Conference later this year. And one of the things that the speaker said is that if I can't see myself in your industry, then I don't feel welcome in your industry. So I think we're going to have to really think about how we reach out to those other minority groups that are out there and those other cultures to bring them in, so we can make what you're suggesting have happen. So we've got some work to do. Okay, guys, my call. Go ahead, Kansas.
I was just going to say one more thing to Dan's question, because I think everything that we've talked about now is actually helping to bridge that. And we have to be patient and know that it's going to take time. Like there's a transformation taking place with what Ashley's bringing, and with all of these therapeutic programs. I myself also was really drawn because I saw the transformations that were happening for people in shows. So I actually went and studied equine guided education and became certified as well as a therapeutic professional, because I see the value on one-to-one experiences that have nothing to do with riding and have nothing to do with making the horse do something. They're passive exercises that just show us that being around horses is great and healthy. And those programs, the Therapeutic Riding Association, NARA, EIA, and all the rest, are fantastic also because they're starting to open up and they need volunteers. So with the exposure from these equine-related TV shows, films, and horse events, hopefully, and with the great new marketing that's going to allow people to see themselves in that position, they'll start to know that they can find a horse center, because there's so many. I think people just don't know, and they need volunteers. So all of these programs should try and find a way to streamline that they have time, because a lot of horse places say, well, I don't have time to deal with the public, or I don't have time to deal with doing a tour. And we have to make the time, and we have to be willing to open that up and really bring these people in so that it helps broaden the community, because it's going to do nothing but benefit all of us in the whole industry.
You're exactly right. I'll just say one thing. If you weren't aware, in July, there is a National Meet a Horse Day. We celebrate it here in DC. We work with the Caisson Platoon and with the mounted police officers here to take horses down on National Mall. And it's just a free open event, and we go down to the farmer's market. We couldn't do it this year because of the pandemic, but you guys wouldn't, because you know this, but it's amazing to see the reaction of children or people that come along the mall and encounter a horse who don't normally see a horse at all, or may not have had any experience with a horse, and they are just mesmerized by the whole thing. And that begins an entire relationship. So my hat's off to you guys. You're exactly on the right track with that kind of thinking. Just exposing. Okay, so my clock says we've run out of time. We've done our hour webinar here, and I'm still captivated by all this and would love to keep talking. But I promise Elizabeth and Ashley in Kansas we'd be mindful of their important time. So I'm going to ask each of you to take just a minute to close the loop. Tell people how they can reach you, or how they can contact you, where they can learn more about you. They sent me some fabulous photos, and I didn't even get to those in this, of some of the tricks that they've been doing and some of the different things that they have. So I encourage you to go and research that. So Kansas, kick us off. Tell people how to find you.
Yeah, so it's really easy. I'm not somebody who has a lot of social media, but there is a website that's circuscowgirl.com. So circuscowgirl.com, and then you can contact me through that website. So it's pretty easy.
Cool. Ashley.
Absolutely. So I suppose I'm going to actually take this moment to announce that we are starting and launching a nonprofit called the Wild Beauty Foundation, which is going to utilize our entertainment lens and this unique platform that we have with these projects to continue trying to cast a light on certain issues horses are facing today, advocacy, freedom, protection in different sectors. So you guys can reach me at ashley@wildbeautyfoundation.org. And just piggybacking off of what Dan said, our great hope is actually to start our own sanctuary near Los Angeles, where we can have the star horses from Black Beauty, from Burner Hollow, and do educational programs where you can meet those horses and just have that connection and introduce horses to people that might not otherwise have had that part of their lives. So we're very excited to start that endeavor.
Oh, keep us posted on that. That sounds like a great follow-up segment I should do somewhere when you're ready. Okay, so last I'm going to go to Elizabeth, and before I do, I want to tell you guys, Elizabeth contacted me with this concept for doing today's webinar, and we really went back and forth about the right players and how to set it all in the right tone and the right things to do. So hats off to Elizabeth for pulling all this off and getting it all together. Elizabeth, tell folks how to find you.
Okay, I wrote it down since, oh, I forgot, it doesn't show up on my virtual screen. My name, ElizabethKMcCall.com, has the email, ElizabethKaYemcCall.com. And this is one of my favorite parts of the horse industry, and I think it's going to open a lot of doors for us. So just think of it as the fact that we've got, a Disney Plus that's putting the word out about some wonderful horse stories, thanks to Ashley. And I just want to say one final thing. She didn't mention that the voice of Black Beauty is Kate Winslet, that she's been working on editing in, which is incredible. So if you don't think that's going to get attention, think again. And also take advantage of this chance to, even if you're going to your local media, take advantage of the fact that, gosh, now that you have a chance to see how horses think or impact people, whatever your, Kathy, Dan, then tie your cause into it. Make that the next sentence. And then promote it from there. Here, you've got the door opening. She's opening the door for anything you want to do. And so is what Kansas is doing too. All these things. Take this and let's go forward and make more of it.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up by telling you that our next event is going to be the American Horse Council's annual conference. We typically do that in June, but because of the pandemic, we had to postpone, and it's going to be virtual, so it'll be a lot of fun. It's October 26, 27, 28, and it is free on Monday and Tuesday. Anybody can attend any of those sessions. Wednesday, there's a small fee to attend, and we've got some great guest speakers lined up to present to us on Wednesday. We're going to be talking about destinations like dude ranches and places to go and enjoy horses and get outdoors. We're going to be hearing about crisis management, and we're going to be hearing from a specialist on diversity and inclusion. How do we bring more people into our industry and expose them to horses and those kinds of things? So we've got some great presentations planned, and go to our website. About the 1st of September, we'll have all the agendas and all the materials and the speaker bios and everything out there for that event. So I encourage you to join us for that. Thanks to Ashley and Kansas and Elizabeth for this afternoon. And if you didn't get to hear the whole thing or you want to hear it again, go out to our website tomorrow and the recording of today's session will be out there. So with that, I'll say farewell from Washington, D.C. and nice to see you in Ocala and in Canada and in Los Angeles and all the rest of you all over the U.S. Thanks. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Julie. Bye. Happy trails.